It is the morning of January 22nd, 1879. A British column of 1,300 soldiers sets up camp at the base of a sphinx-shaped mountain called Isandlwana. The commander does not bother building a defensive perimeter. He has fought Africans before.
A rather predictable outcome, wouldn't you agree? We shall proceed as planned.
He is not worried. By noon, 20,000 Zulu warriors had killed almost every man in that camp. Not with guns, with spears. The British Army, the same force that had just finished fighting in Afghanistan, was dismantled in under 2 hours by warriors armed with cowhide shields and short stabbing blades. It remains one of the most catastrophic defeats in British military history. So when people ask what would happen if 80,000 Zulu warriors fought 40,000 Roman legionaries, this is not a question about primitive armies. This is a question about two of the most sophisticated military systems the ancient world ever produced, meeting each other for the first and only time. And the answer is not what you think. Let's establish who we are talking about. The Zulu Impi at its peak, 1879. Under King Cetshwayo, the Zulu military is not a tribal warband. It is a standing army, organized by age regiment, the Amabutho, where every male between 18 and 40 is inducted, trained, and prohibited from marrying until they have proven themselves in battle. This is full-time soldiering. These men live together, train together, eat together, and die together. Their tactical system is called impondo zankomo, the horns of the buffalo. Every engagement deploys the same formation: a massive chest to pin the enemy front, 2 encircling horns to wrap around the flanks simultaneously, and a reserve, the loins, seated with their backs to the battle, so they do not get excited and commit too early. It is elegant, disciplined, and brutally effective. The chest absorbs, the horns kill. Their weapon is the ikla, a short stabbing spear with a broad blade designed for close combat. The long throwing spear was deliberately phased out by Shaka Zulu a generation earlier. He understood that warriors who throw their weapons are warriors who are standing still. He wanted warriors who closed the distance and never stopped. Speed is the Zulu army's entire identity. In the weeks before Isandlwana, this force covered 50 miles in 5 days, on foot, in African heat, carrying everything they needed. They arrived combat-ready. Now the Romans. The Roman legion of the Imperial period, roughly 100 AD. 5,000 to 6,000 men organized into cohorts and centuries, each one a self-contained unit capable of independent action or seamless integration into the larger formation. These soldiers train daily. They are not conscripts pulled from farms. They are professionals on 20-year contracts. Their equipment is the product of centuries of iterative warfare. The Rorke segmentata plate armor distributes the weight of a blow across overlapping iron bands. The scutum, a curved rectangular shield, nearly 1 meter tall and 30 centimeters thick at the boss, can lock with adjacent shields to form a continuous wall or a roof. The pilum, a heavy javelin with a soft iron shank, is engineered specifically to bend on impact, fouling an enemy's shield so he cannot throw it back or use it effectively. Their weapon is the gladius, 24 inches of iron designed for one thing: thrusting into the gap that opens between you and the man you are pushing against. What makes the Roman legion extraordinary is not any individual weapon, it is the system. The Romans do not win through strength. They win through pressure. Disciplined, sustained, organized pressure that does not let up and does not break. 80,000 Zulu against 40,000 Romans. 2-to-1 odds in favor of the Impi. Here is where it gets complicated. Before we talk about what happens when these armies meet, we need to talk about the one factor that neither of them can control: the ground. Because where this battle happens determines everything. And that is not a detail, that is the entire fight. The Zulu buffalo formation only works if the horns have room to run. The two encircling wings need open flanks, enough space to sprint wide, loop around, and close behind the enemy before he can turn to face them. At Isandlwana, they had a mountain on one side and open plain on the other. The horns needed roughly 2 kilometers of clearance to execute properly. Against the British, they had that. Against the Romans, it depends entirely on where the Romans choose to stand. A Roman commander in 100 AD who understood the threat, and Roman commanders studied their enemies obsessively, would not give the Impi room. He would find a position where the flanks were naturally blocked. A river bend, a ridgeline that channeled the approach, a narrow valley mouth. Somewhere that compressed the battlefield so the horns could not extend. Julius Caesar did exactly this against the Helvetii in 58 BC. He chose elevated ground, denied his flanks, and forced a numerically superior enemy into a frontal engagement where Roman discipline could neutralize mass. The Zulu commanders would recognize this immediately. They had fought terrain-aware enemies before. Their response would be to probe, send skirmishers forward to draw out the Roman position, force a reaction, identify where the flanks were soft. The Zulu used scouts the same way the Romans used exploratores. Both armies are gathering information before the first major engagement. Let's say the Romans have found a defensible position, a ridge, open ground in front, steep drops on the flanks. The kind of terrain a Roman legate would describe as eminentia loci, ground that gives the defense a mathematical advantage. 40,000 legionaries in formation on elevated ground, 80,000 Zulu warriors assembling on the plain below. The Romans can see the full buffalo forming. They have never seen anything like it, but they have fought Parthians, Dacians, Germans, Numidians. They know what a flanking force looks like. The tribunes are already sending cohorts to anchor the flanks. Then the Impi begins to move. The Zulu do not advance slowly. This is not a march. This formation runs. A fit Zulu warrior carrying a shield and spear could sustain a pace that covered a kilometer in under 4 minutes. 80,000 men accelerating across open ground toward a Roman ridgeline creates something the Roman legionaries have never experienced: the sound of it. 160,000 feet hitting dry earth simultaneously produces a percussion that is felt before it is heard. And before the sound, the Impi sings. War chants coordinated by regiment, rhythmic, escalating, designed to build their own aggression and break the enemy's nerve before contact. The Romans do not break. This is critical. The single thing that separates the Roman legion from most of the armies it fought is that it was trained specifically to hold formation under psychological pressure. Roman soldiers practiced battle noise, simulated charges, and stress drills as part of their daily training. They had a technical term for holding the line when everything in your body told you to run: virtus. It was considered a professional skill, not just a character trait. The front cohorts lock shields. Pila are leveled. At approximately 30 meters, the outer edge of effective pilum range, the first volley releases.
A pilum at combat range hits with enough force to punch through a wooden shield and still wound the man behind it. The Zulu Isilangu shield is cowhide stretched over a wooden frame. Against a thrown javelin at 30 meters, it provides partial protection. Some warriors stop the shaft. Many do not. The first volley staggers the chest, not stops it, staggers it. The warriors in the leading ranks go down. The warriors behind them step over the bodies and keep coming. This is not recklessness. This is the product of the same regimental system that the Romans use. These men have trained to advance through casualties. They are expected to. The second pilum volley goes into the mass at 15 meters. Then the gladii come out. And here is where the Roman system reveals its genius. The legionary does not swing his sword. He does not try to overpower the man in front of him. He uses his scutum to push a full body press into the warrior opposite and then stabs low into the gap that opens between the shields. The gladius is a killing instrument designed for exactly the geometry that close shield contact creates. You do not need a killing blow. You need a wound. A wounded man falls. A fallen man creates a gap. A gap lets the next thrust land. The Zulu Ikluva is operating in the same philosophy. Get close, get inside the weapon's reach, and stab. But the scutum's curved face creates a problem the Ikluva was not designed for. The shield wall does not have the same gaps that a British redcoats formation had. There is no way to reach around it with a short blade. The chest engagement becomes a grind. Neither side breaks. Bodies are accumulating on both sides.
But the chest is not supposed to win. The chest is supposed to hold. The horns are already running. The left and right horn regiments, younger, faster men assigned specifically to the encircling role, have broken from the main body and are sprinting wide. At full speed, a Zulu horn regiment could cover 800 meters of lateral ground in under 3 minutes. The Roman flanks are anchored to the ridge drop. Cohorts have been positioned there. The legate knows this is coming. This is the moment where the terrain decision pays off or fails. If the ridge drops are steep enough, the horns cannot swing wide enough to complete the encirclement. They hit the flank cohorts instead of the Roman rear. A flank attack against prepared Roman cohorts is survivable. An attack on the rear is catastrophic. If the terrain holds, the Romans contain the horns in a 3-sided engagement. They are still outnumbered 2-1, but they are not encircled. If the horns find even a partial gap, they begin flowing into the Roman rear, and that changes the entire calculation. Let's play both outcomes honestly. In the terrain-favored scenario, the Roman flanks hold for the first hour. The Impi's chest and the 2 partially blocked horns are all pressing simultaneously against a ridgeline that the Romans control. The Romans are taking casualties. The Zulu are taking more. The Roman relief system, second-line cohorts rotating forward to replace exhausted front-rank fighters, is functioning. Legionaries fight for 15 to 20 minutes at maximum intensity, then rotate back. The Zulu do not rotate. A warrior in the chest is in the chest until the battle ends or he falls. Fatigue becomes the Roman weapon. After 90 minutes of sustained engagement at this intensity, the chest regiment's effectiveness begins to degrade. The warriors are not broken, they are exhausted. Coordination degrades when men are this tired. The Ikloa thrusts become less precise, the shield work less disciplined. The Roman line does not degrade at the same rate. Rotation keeps fresh soldiers at the point of contact. By the second hour, the Roman line is pushing forward where the Zulu chest has thinned. What began as a defensive holding action is becoming a slow advance. Now the reserve, the loins, commits. The Zulu reserve is not a last resort. It is the decisive weapon. It is held back specifically for the moment when the enemy has committed everything and has no answer for a fresh force. The problem is that the Romans have not committed everything. That is what the rotation system is designed to prevent. When the loins enter the fight, they hit a Roman line that is tired, but not spent, organized, but not at peak efficiency. It is the correct moment by Zulu doctrine. Against a British column that was already at maximum engagement and had no reserves, it would be the killing blow. Against a Roman legion that still has cohorts in reserve formation on the ridge, it creates a new problem. The Romans see it coming. The Roman reserve cohorts advance to meet the fresh Zulu force on the slope, not at the Roman line. The engagement shifts. The Romans are no longer defending a fixed position. They are now attacking downhill into the committed Zulu reserve with the weight advantage that elevation gives a charging line. This is a different battle than the chest grind. Roman legionaries charging downhill with locked shields and lowered pila are not the same force that was holding a stationary line. The kinetic energy of a downhill charge adds force that the individual soldier does not have to generate. The loins absorb it. They are fresh, but they are receiving an impact rather than delivering one. The buffalo has lost its tactical sequence. The chest is exhausted. The horns are contained. The loins are in contact. There is no more reserve, and the Romans still have cohorts they have not used. But 80,000 warriors who are exhausted and out of sequence are still 80,000 warriors. And the Romans are about to discover the one thing their system was never designed to handle. What happens when you kill 1,000 men and 10,000 more step forward? The Roman kill rate at the front line is exceptional. In sustained close combat, a disciplined Roman cohort can maintain a positive kill ratio of roughly 3-to-1 against a comparably motivated but less systematically trained opponent. The pilum volleys, the scutum press, the gladius thrust. It is a machine for converting human contact into Roman advantage. 3-to-1 sounds decisive. Against 80,000 men, it is not enough. The math. 40,000 Romans killing at 3-to-1 still requires killing 80,000 opponents to end the engagement. And the Impi does not stop when it loses men. Zulu warriors were specifically trained to understand that the buffalo does not retreat when the chest takes casualties. The chest taking casualties is expected. The chest is buying time for the horns. In the second and third hours, the Zulu numerical advantage begins reasserting itself in a way that Roman tactical doctrine was not designed for. Pure density. When the chest regiment and the loins are both in contact simultaneously, the Romans face a front that is roughly 6 kilometers wide. Maintaining cohesion across 6 kilometers with 40,000 men means some sections of the line are thinner than others. The Impi commanders, they have their own version of tribunes, senior Induna officers who manage regimental coordination, begin identifying thin sections and channeling pressure there. This is not random bravery. This is tactical observation. Where the line thins, the Impi pushes harder. Where it pushes harder, the Romans die faster. Where the Romans die faster, the rotation system breaks down because there are not enough second-line soldiers to replace front casualties and maintain the line simultaneously. The Romans are not losing, but they are no longer winning. Both armies have now been in sustained contact for 3 to 4 hours. In historical engagements of this scale, This is where one side's command structure begins to fracture. The Zulu lose battles when their formation is disrupted before the chest engages. At Rorke's Drift, 139 British soldiers held a fortified position against 4,000 Zulu warriors, not because they outfought them, but because the fortification broke the buffalo's ability to form up. The Iklewa requires closing distance. The defenders' rifles denied distance. The entire tactical system became inapplicable. The Romans lose battles when they are outmaneuvered before contact. Cannae, 216 BC, Hannibal used a concave center that deliberately gave ground, drawing the Roman mass forward while Carthaginian cavalry encircled the rear. The Romans pushed into a pocket that closed behind them. 50,000 Romans died in a single afternoon. The formation that was their greatest strength became the mechanism of their destruction. In this engagement, neither side has found their decisive blow. The terrain denied the horns their full arc. The rotation system denied the Zulu the fatigue advantage. The numerical advantage is slowly reasserting, but not yet decisively. Then the sun begins to move. Zulu doctrine discouraged night fighting. The buffalo required visual coordination between the chest and the horns. Induna officers on high ground reading the battle and using runners to redirect regiments. In darkness, that system breaks down. The Impi is most dangerous in daylight. The Roman legions trained for night operations. They built camps after every day's march, fortified them in under 2 hours, and held them against night attacks with organized sentry rotations. A Roman legionary in a fortified camp at night is not the same tactical problem as a Roman legionary on a ridge at noon. A Zulu Induna watching the sun move would understand this. The pressure intensifies in the final hours of daylight. Here is the part of this analysis that every similar video skips. The outcome of this battle does not depend on weapons. It does not depend on armor. It depends on one question that has decided every major engagement in military history. Which side runs out of reasons to keep going first? The Zulu military system was built on something the Romans would have recognized immediately, because they built the same thing in a different language. Identity. A Roman legionary's entire self-concept was organized around the unit. The eagle standard was not a decoration, it was the physical embodiment of the legion's honor. Losing it was the single worst thing a Roman unit could do. There are recorded instances of Roman soldiers dying to recover a fallen standard rather than withdrawing to safety. The psychology was not irrational. It was engineered. The Zulu regimental system produced the same architecture. Young men were enrolled in their age regiment at adolescence. They ate together, trained together, and were prohibited from marrying until the regiment earned distinction in battle. Their identity, their future, their right to a family, all of it was bound to the regiment's honor. A warrior who ran was not just a coward. He was a man who no longer had a place in his own society. Both sides have professional armies where retreat is culturally more costly than death. This means the engagement will not end because one side loses heart. It will end when one side physically cannot continue. By the 5th hour of this engagement, casualties on both sides are severe. Roman estimates, 8,000 to 12,000 dead. Zulu estimates, 18,000 to 25,000 dead. The kill ratio still favors the Romans, but the Zulus started with twice as many men. The Roman line is intact, but it has compressed. Cohorts that were holding flanks have been pulled inward to reinforce thinning sections. The flanks are no longer anchored.
The Zulu commanders see this immediately. The horns, which have been pushing against contained flanks for hours, suddenly have room. Not the full arc they wanted, but enough.
Here is what the records of Isandlwana describe, and what I want you to hold in mind as I tell you the outcome. A British officer named Henry Curling survived the battle. He wrote afterward that the thing he could not explain was not the Zulu bravery. It was the silence. He expected screaming, chaos, the sound of an undisciplined mob. What he found was terrifying in a different way. Organized men, moving with purpose, who did not panic, did not hesitate, and did not stop when their comrades fell beside them. Curling had fought in other engagements. He had seen how men behaved under fire. What he saw at Isandlwana did not match anything he had a category for. If a Roman tribune had survived this engagement, I believe he would have written something similar. Not about barbarians, about soldiers. The outcome, as honestly as this analysis can produce one, on open, neutral terrain with full room for the buffalo to operate, the Zulu Impi wins. The numerical advantage combines with the encirclement doctrine to produce a situation the Roman rotation system cannot resolve. The Romans inflict devastating casualties, perhaps 30,000 Zulu dead by engagement's end. But 30,000 dead from 80,000 still leaves 50,000 warriors. And when the horns close the rear, the Roman formation that was their greatest strength becomes, as it did at Cannae, the mechanism of their destruction. The compressed mass cannot swing weapons effectively. The disciplined lines that made rotation possible are now pressed together by force from every direction. On terrain chosen by the Romans, ridge, compressed flanks, choke point, the outcome reverses. The Romans hold the buffalo's horns and fight a slow, grinding engagement where their rotation system degrades the Zulu advantage hour by hour. By nightfall, the Impi has taken catastrophic losses and withdraws. The Romans build their camp. In the morning, the question is whether 40,000 Romans can pursue and finish 50,000 Zulu warriors across terrain the Zulu know intimately, and the Romans do not. That pursuit ends badly for Rome.